everyone, and welcome to a special bonus episode of the Lord of the Rings AMA podcast. My name is Matthias Austin, and on this podcast, I would normally invite you to ask me anything about the Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, or anything related to the greater legendarium of J.R.R. Tolkien, and I would normally do my best to give you as in-depth an answer as I can. This is not, however, a normal episode. This is our first official Tolkien Reading Day bonus episode. According to the Tolkien Society's website, an educational charity, literary society, and international fan club devoted to promoting the life and works of J.R.R. Tolkien, Tolkien Reading Day began following an inquiry from Sean Kirst, a columnist of the Post-Standard, which is a paper local to Syracuse, New York, in January of 2002. And Sean wrote into them asking, "My grandparents were fishing folk from Buckie in the north of Scotland, carriers of the old stories and legends, and the trilogy has filled a certain hole in my life. I have many friends here in New York who were equally moved by the book, reignited by the film, and we all wondered, is there any day devoted informally to readings from the trilogy in the way that Bloom's Day is devoted to Joyce?" The Tolkien Society loved that idea, and they selected March 25th, 2003 as the first official Tolkien Reading Day. Why March 25th? Well, spoilers for my recurring segment of the regular podcast, but March 25th was the day in Middle-earth that the Ring of Power was destroyed and Sauron was defeated. In celebration, Tolkien fans are encouraged to engage with the works of Tolkien, whether through reading something you haven't read before, rereading something you've read a million times but you want to view with fresh eyes, or like many of you are doing right now, listening to Tolkien podcasts. The Tolkien Society literally has that on their website for suggested activities, so yay podcasts! Each year, the Tolkien Society suggests a theme, and the theme for 2026 is Unlikely Heroes. I didn't realize that when I selected the passage I was going to read and talk about today, but I think I can make it fit. I want to read a section from The Return of the King. It's maybe one of the most famous and dramatic moments of the entire story, which is why I wanted to talk about it on my first Tolkien Reading Day special. For context, the siege of Minas Tirith is in full swing. Denethor, leader of Gondor, has abandoned his people in his grief. The call for aid has gone out to Rohan, but no messengers have returned. Aragorn and the Grey Company were last seen entering the paths of the dead, and Gandalf is desperately trying to gather the defenders of the city as Grond, the great ram named for Morgoth's hammer, has reached the gates. And I'm going to pick up the story right there. The drums rolled and rattled. With a vast rush, Grond was hurled forward by huge hands. It reached the gate. It swung. A deep boom rumbled through the city like thunder running in the clouds. But the doors of iron and posts of steel withstood the stroke. Then the black captain rose in his stirrups and cried aloud in a dreadful voice, speaking in some forgotten tongue words of power and terror to rend both heart and stone. Thrice he cried, thrice the great ram boomed, and suddenly, upon the last stroke, the gate of Gondor broke. As if stricken by some blasting spell, it burst asunder. There was a flash of searing lightning, and the doors tumbled in riven fragments to the ground. In rode the Lord of the Nazgul. A great black shape against the fires beyond he loomed up, grown to a vast menace of despair. In rode the Lord of the Nazgul, under the archway that no enemy ever yet had passed, and all fled before his face. All save one. There, waiting, silent and still in the space before the gate, sat Gandalf upon Shadowfax. Shadowfax, who alone among the free horses of the earth endured the terror, unmoving, steadfast as a graven image in Rath Dinan. "You cannot enter here," said Gandalf, and the huge shadow halted. "Go back to the abyss prepared for you. Go back! Fall into the nothingness that awaits you and your master. Go!" The Black Rider flung back his hood, and behold, he had a kingly crown, and yet upon no head visible was it set. The red fires shone between it and the mantled shoulders vast and dark. From a mouth unseen there came a deadly laughter. "Old fool," he said, "old fool, this is my hour. Do you not know death when you see it? Die now, and curse in vain!" And with that, he lifted high his sword, and flames ran down the blade. Gandalf did not move. And in that very moment, away behind in some courtyard of a city, a cock crowed. Shrill and clear he crowed, recking nothing of wizardry or war, welcoming only the morning that in the sky far above the shadows of death was coming with the dawn. And as if in answer there came from far away another note. Horns. Horns. Horns! In dark Mindalluin's side they dimly echoed, great horns of the north wildly blowing. Rohan had come at last. And I'll be honest, I can't get through that last bit without getting teary. In the very hour of death, when all looked lost, the horns of Gondor rang through the air. And we know what happens next. Rohan charges the field, the Witch King is killed, sadly, so is Theoden. And when things again look bleakest, Aragorn arrives with reinforcements and the forces of Sauron are, for the moment, defeated. Now, for us as the reader, we know that help is on the way. But for the defenders within Gondor, they have no clue. To them, it's a miraculous appearance, this sudden help that comes out of nowhere. And this is something that Tolkien would sometimes call a Eucatastrophe, or a good catastrophe, which he defined in his essay titled On Fairy Tales this way. The consolation of fairy stories, the joy of the happy ending, or more correctly of the good catastrophe, the sudden joyous turn, for there is no true end to any fairy tale. This joy, which is one of the things which fairy stories can produce supremely well, is not essentially escapist nor fugitive. In its fairy tale or otherworld setting, it is a sudden and miraculous grace. Now this idea, the sudden appearance of good that gives the story a happy turn, it's something that Tolkien uses a lot in his writing. It's the eagles arriving at the end of The Hobbit. It's Gollum losing his footing in Mount Doom. In the Silmarillion, it's Eärendil arriving in Valinor, who Eonwë, the herald of Manwë, calls the looked-for that cometh at unawares, the longed-for that cometh beyond hope. Now that one is a double, because for the elves in Middle-earth, Eärendil's arrival in Valinor leads to their Eucatastrophe, the Valar sending the armies of Valinor to defeat Morgoth. And I would also include the arrival of the Rohirrim just as the Witch King breaks down the gates, and the arrival of Aragorn just as the Haradrim gain the upper hand. It's not just things found in Lord of the Rings, it's in all sorts of fantasy. Han Solo showing up to help Luke in the Death Star trench run. It's Captain America picking up Thor's hammer in Avengers Endgame. It's those moments that make the hair on the back of your neck stand up as hope floods into you. Now that is at least my interpretation of the word, though some Tolkien scholars may disagree with me. A criticism that sometimes gets thrown at Tolkien, along with other authors who use Eucatastrophes, is that it's a cheap trick, a deus ex machina. The term deus ex machina, if I may borrow a segment from our friend Peter over at Things You Can Do, is our
Moment of Greek.
It means God from the machine, which referred to a practice in ancient Greek theater where the hero would be in an unsolvable situation, when suddenly a god would appear, usually being lowered down to the stage on a machine or a crane, and intervene, sparing the hero and taking them away. Basically, the accusation, by calling it a deus ex machina, is, well, you wrote yourself into a corner, Tolkien, so you had to do something random and wild to save yourself. And I think this is an unfair view on Tolkien's work. And it leads me to the theme of unlikely heroes. In Tolkien's world, unlikely things happen all the time, but how they happen or why they happen is anything but random. Consider our passage for today. Rohan arrived at exactly the right moment to save Minas Tirith. But that was the result of a chain of decisions that they had made. Theoden made the choice to leave before his entire force was mustered, knowing that it would weaken him. He chose to put his trust in Gan-Buri-Gan, and Gan-Buri-Gan, in turn, chose to help the Rohirrim, despite a long history of injustice done towards them. And he led them through the Druidan forest. Éowyn chose to disobey Theoden, doubly so by taking Merry, who in turn chose to trust a random rider. It's less clear in the books that it is in fact Éowyn. Aragorn chose to take the perilous path of the dead. Frodo repeatedly chose mercy and pity on Gollum. The Eagles, as much as they may seem like a miracle, they have agency. They chose to aid Bilbo and the dwarves in The Hobbit when they were up in a tree, and all of these tiny choices were made that snowballed into a Eucatastrophe. I love today's reading because it just gives us so much hope. It's not a secret that the world isn't a great place right now. War and violence, division and distrust, sickness, poverty, the everyday struggles of life. Maybe you're in Minas Tirith, besieged, facing down challenges or great evil. Have hope. A Eucatastrophe may be on the way if you just hold on a little longer. And if you are outside of Minas Tirith, seeing the armies of Mordor close in on your allies, know that each little choice you make may make you the unlikely hero that will slowly, step by step, decision by decision, lead to the horns sounding as the dawn breaks, as Rohan arrives at last. I hope this Tolkien Reading Day episode gave you something to think about, and more importantly, gave you the motivation to read some Tolkien. If you haven't read the books yet, today is a great day to start. Maybe it's been a long time and you want to give this series a reread. I promise you, you're going to find something more in there that you haven't noticed before. I'd love to know what you did to celebrate. I know that on Spotify you can leave a comment on an episode, so leave a comment there. If you're on Apple or some other platform, why not give a 5-star review of the show, and in the review, tell me what you did for Tolkien Reading Day, and I'll read it out on the show next week. Thank you all for listening. Thank you to Peter over at Things You Can Do for his sound clip. Thanks as always to Michael for our music and Lauren for our artwork. And that's all for this week. Iluvatar willing, I'll see you on Monday for our regular episode. See you then, and happy reading.